It started with the window. I know that sounds small, but trust me, when you live alone, a window that shouldn't be open feels bigger than it is. So, for context, I'm 33. I rent this old farmhouse just outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I moved out here last spring after a rough breakup and burnout from city life. Wanted quiet, solitude, space to breathe. It's a nice place, honestly. Real wood floors, wraparound porch, view of nothing but fields. You can hear your own heartbeat out here at night, which is probably why I noticed the window thing at all. It was April 12th. I remember because it was a Saturday, and I'd spent most of the afternoon cleaning out the garage. I came in around 6, tired, dusty, and hungry. Grabbed a leftover burrito from the fridge, popped it in the microwave, and as I stood waiting for the beep, I happened to glance through the kitchen window, the one that faces out across the backyard and over the open field behind the property. That's when I saw it. The window on the old equipment shack across the field, about 300 feet away, was cracked open. That might not sound strange, but here's the thing. No one uses that shack. Not me, not the owners, not the farmers that lease the land. It's got no lock, no utilities, and it leans so hard to one side you'd think a sneeze could bring it down. I'd walked by it a few times during jogs, peered in once. Just an old stool and some rusted tools. That's it. So I stood there for a second, staring at that open window. It wasn't wide, just maybe 6 inches, but enough to stand out. I remember muttering, "Huh," like that explained anything. Then the microwave beeped. I turned away, ate, forgot about it. Until the next morning. I'm out on the porch drinking coffee and I glance across the field again. Windows closed. That might sound normal, but here's what made my stomach twist. The wind had been dead all night, like not a breeze. I stared at that shack for a long minute, then finally just shook it off. Told myself a raccoon maybe pushed it closed from the inside. If there even was a raccoon in there. I went inside. Didn't think about it again for a few days. Then, more odd stuff started happening. Subtle, but just enough to register in the background of your brain, you know? Things like hearing gravel crunch when I knew no one should be walking up the drive. A screen door creaking open once when I was showering, even though it was locked. And then, on April 19th, it escalated. I'd just gotten home from town. It was just after 8 p.m., still a little light out. I walked into the house, dropped groceries on the counter, and glanced out the kitchen window. The shack window was open again, but this time there was something else. There was a shadow inside, not movement, just the faint silhouette of a person. Sitting. I froze, blinked, stepped back, then slowly leaned forward again to get a clearer look. The shadow was gone. I tried to convince myself it was just the way the setting sun hit the wall, or maybe my reflection. But the part that stuck with me? There's no chair in that shack anymore. I remembered that clearly from the last time I looked in, and yet, it looked like someone was sitting. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floorboards, every click of the settling house, I jumped. Around 3 a.m., I finally cracked. Grabbed a flashlight and jacket, stepped out onto the porch. The moon was out, cold, silent. The kind of silence that wraps around your chest like a wet towel. I walked across the field, slowly. My boots flattened the grass as I went. My flashlight flicked back and forth across the shack, catching tiny glints of rust, cobwebs on the door handle, that window still open. My breath was shallow when I reached the door. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before I pushed it open. Nothing. Just the stale, earthy smell of time. No person, no chair. Just dirt, old nails, a splintered beam in the corner. But the floor? It had tracks. Clean ones. Someone had walked inside recently. Flat shoe prints, not boots like mine. I backed out, didn't even close the door, walked straight back to the house. And here's where the story should end, right? Creepy shack, local drifter, case closed, but it didn't end. Because 2 nights later, I woke up to a noise. Not outside. Inside. It was soft, deliberate, like someone dragging their fingers along the hallway wall. I grabbed my phone. 2:17 a.m. I stayed in bed, holding my breath, trying to convince myself it was the wind again, even though the house was sealed tight and that kind of sound wasn't the wind. I heard it again, this time closer. Still no footsteps, just that faint, almost curious drag. Like whoever it was wasn't trying to hurt me, just exploring. I waited another 5 minutes, then got up, heart pounding like a war drum. I held my pocket knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, crept out into the hallway. Empty. Every room. Empty. No windows open, no signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, nothing moved. Except the back door? It was unlocked. And I never leave it unlocked. I slept with the lights on after that. The next day I called the property owner, Mr. Langley. He's 72, retired, and built tough. I told him what happened. He paused for a long time, then said, "You're not the first tenant to mention that shack." I asked what he meant. He told me a guy named Connor lived there in 2019. Said he started reporting similar things, noises, open windows, someone standing outside at night. Then he said this. He moved out real sudden, left a note, said he couldn't handle the feeling of being watched. Langley never mentioned it before because no one else had stayed longer than a few months. And, I was the first person in a while to rent during spring. That was it for me. I packed the next morning, called my brother, drove to Tulsa, and stayed on his couch for like a month. Here's the thing, there's nothing haunted about that shack, no history, no crimes, no legends, but something about it feels like it's always observing, not hurting, not chasing, just watching. And I think the part that keeps me up at night is this. I still don't know if someone was living in that shack or if someone was living in my house. I know exactly when it started. April 17th. It was a Wednesday. The only reason I remember that date is because it was the first night I hesitated before unlocking my front door. That tiny pause, that moment where your gut says something's off, it's the kind of thing you don't forget. Let me back up. My name's Eric. I live in a 2-bedroom condo just outside of Des Moines, Iowa. I work in insurance. Nothing glamorous. I'm not the kind of guy that attracts danger. I lock my doors, I pay my bills, I keep to myself. But that week, man, something felt off from the jump. It started with a call from my ex, Megan. We hadn't talked in over a year, and out of nowhere she texts me, "Hey, just checking if you're okay. Got a weird call about you from some guy." I asked who. She just said he didn't give a name, just said he used to know me and thought I might be in trouble. Then he hung up. At first, I thought maybe it was someone from college being dramatic, or someone playing games. I kind of shrugged it off. But the next day I noticed something weird. I came home from work and the little metal flap on my keyless entry pad, it was bent. Not broken, just slightly bent upward, like someone had tried to pry it open with a screwdriver. I stood there staring at it. No paint scratches, no damage to the door itself, just that flap. Lifted. Like someone had poked around and backed off. I still don't know why, but I didn't report it. I guess I just didn't want to believe something was happening. But then, 2 nights later, I found a printout on my doormat. It was a single sheet of white paper, folded once. No envelope, no return address. I opened it. All it said was, "You should really change your code. 1994 is a little obvious." I stared at that paper like it was a live grenade. Because 1994, that was my code. I picked it because it's the year I graduated high school. I'd never told anyone that. Not my parents, not Megan, no one. And the keypad doesn't have any kind of network connection. It's an old off-brand model I installed myself. The only way someone would know the code is if they saw me type it in. I stood there frozen for like a full minute. Then I did something dumb. I opened the door and walked inside like everything was fine, but everything was not fine. Because that night, I noticed my bedroom closet was cracked open, just barely, and I always shut that door completely. It's a habit, like muscle memory. So now I'm standing in my room, alone, staring at that tiny sliver of darkness between the closet doors, trying to convince myself I must have left it open that morning. But I knew I didn't. Still, I opened it. Slowly. Nothing inside. Everything looked untouched. No forced entry. No sign of anyone. But you know what freaked me out more than anything? The next morning my toothbrush was wet, and I hadn't used it yet. It was damp, not soaked, just used. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds, touched it, sniffed it like an idiot. And then I just sat down on the edge of my tub and held my head in my hands thinking, is someone screwing with me? Am I losing it? I changed the code that night, set it to a random 7-digit number, wrote it down, stuck it in my wallet, just in case I forgot it. I also added a deadbolt from the inside, something no one could open without a key, and for a few days, nothing happened. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe someone was messing with me and gave up. Until that voicemail. It was a Friday. I'd just gotten back from getting groceries. I saw the notification and hit play. You changed the code. That was smart. Most people don't. You're paying attention now. That's good. I dropped my phone. I swear to God, my hands were shaking. My mouth went dry. It wasn't just the message, it was the calm in the voice. Like we were just chatting. Like we were old friends. I saved the voicemail and took it to the police the next morning. The officer I spoke to was polite but didn't seem too concerned. He said unless there was evidence of someone breaking in or a threat made, there wasn't much they could do. He said, it might just be someone trying to rattle you. Attention-seeking, but I wasn't so sure anymore. Because that night, I heard footsteps in my attic. I live alone. No pets, no squirrels up there. I'd know. This was deliberate. Heel-to-toe pacing, just a few slow steps, then silence, then again. I stood in the hallway looking up at the attic hatch for what felt like an hour, and then I swear I heard something even worse. I heard a soft, slow laugh. Not loud, not exaggerated. Just one of those short, nasal chuckles people do when they find something amusing, like whoever was up there was watching me react. That was the first time I really considered sleeping in my car. Instead, I called my friend Travis, asked if I could crash on his couch for a few nights, told him I was going through some stuff. He said yes, no questions asked. I left that night. When I came back 5 days later, everything was exactly where I left it, except for one thing. The toothbrush was gone. Gone. Not moved. Not swapped. Just missing. And in its place, in that little ceramic holder, was a brand new toothbrush. Same color, same brand, same everything. Still in the package. That's when I knew I wasn't being messed with. I was being watched, closely. Someone had been living in my house. Or maybe not living, maybe just coming in, watching, leaving things just close enough to normal that I'd doubt myself. I moved out within a week. I didn't sell the place, I just left, broke the lease, took a hit on the deposit, didn't care. I didn't even tell the landlord what happened. I just said I had to go, and I haven't been back. Now, I live in an apartment. Top floor, no keypad, one key, deadbolt, cameras. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I heard someone laughing, and I still carry that old paper in my wallet. The one that said 1994 is a little obvious. I keep it as a reminder that someone somewhere thought they knew me well enough to stand inches from my bed in silence and leave no trace.